Welcome to the Wind Up with Will, everyone. I'm your host, Will, here with another video. And today I'm going to be talking about the College Football National Championship. That is taking place tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m. on ESPN. I'm going to have some friends over. We're going to watch the game and enjoy it. And if you didn't know, it's between Notre Dame and Ohio State. Now, I want to give a brief recap of the semifinals because it's been almost 2 weeks since I've done a college football video. So in the semifinals, Notre Dame's game was on Thursday, January 9th. So 10 days ago is when this game was played. Notre Dame won 27-24 over Penn State. Phenomenal game, instant classic. It was back and forth. Penn State was up 10-0 for majority of the first half. Riley Leonard gets injured, comes out of the game. Steve Angeli, the backup quarterback, takes Notre Dame down the field. They get a field goal before halftime and score a touchdown right out of to start the second half. All of a sudden, brand new game. And those two moments, going down and getting the field goal with the backup quarterback and scoring a touchdown to start the second half, that's what jump-started this team. That's what jump-started the rest of the game. There was 13 points scored total in between both teams in the first half, and then in the second half there was 38 points scored total. Yes, 38 points scored total. Notre Dame ended up winning 27-24. It was back and forth. Jeremiah Love had an incredible run to score the go-ahead touchdown for the Irish before Penn State scored two touchdowns in a row to take a 24-17 lead. And then Jaden Greathouse had a huge, busted, wide-open coverage. The Penn State defender fell down after he kind of did a juke move, and Riley Leonard hits him for a big touchdown to tie the game. And at the very end of the game, Drew Aller, quarterback for Penn State, throws a costly interception. Notre Dame runs the clock down and kicks the game-winning field goal with Jeter, the kicker, who has been injured throughout a huge portion of the year. Mitch Jeter. He's missed a good portion of the several games throughout the year. He kicked horribly during the season. He struggled with a groin injury. But for him to come back and hit the game-winning field goal that sends them to the national championship, it was just a huge moment. Great story for Mitch Jeter. And it's very, in the playoffs, he has done well making kicks, even though during the regular season, Notre Dame was the worst kicking team in FBS. But kicking has gone well for them so far in the playoffs. Knock on wood that nothing happens tomorrow. So, great game, phenomenal game. Both teams' uniforms look great in the game. It was a classic game all around in the Orange Bowl. Notre Dame wins the Orange Bowl, goes to the national championship for the first time since 2012. And I'm really excited as a Notre Dame fan, as you can see. I'm there was part of me that just felt like that this would never come, but it's here, so I'm excited just soaking it in to watch them play in a national championship game. The other semifinal game was on Friday, January 10th, between number 5 Texas and number 8 Ohio State. Ohio State won the game 28-14. This was a game and it was kind of back and forth as well. Ohio State scored 7, scored a touchdown in the first quarter. Quinshawn Judkins and then Jaden Blue punched in a touchdown for Texas to tie the game 7-7 before Travion Henderson had a 75-yard pass from Will Howard to put them at 14-7. Texas responds again in the second half with Jaden Blue, another pass touchdown from Quinn Ewers to tie the game 14-all. And then that's when Ohio State scored again in the fourth quarter, another touchdown by Quinshawn Judkins to make it 21-14. And then Texas was driving and had a chance to tie the game. They were first and goal, I think, at like the 2-yard line. They had a couple plays kind of busted up that ends up bumping them back. Or they had one, I think they had an incomplete pass and then a run play that was blown up in the backfield. They lost about 5 yards, and all of a sudden they're on the 7-yard line now, third and goal. and it's looking a little harder. Like, oh, are they gonna score the touchdown here? They're going in the wrong direction now. And then on that third down, Quinn Ewers was strip sacked, and Jack Sawyer picked up the ball and ran it 83 yards for the touchdown to put the nail in the coffin on the game, 28-14. It was actually an interesting story that I didn't realize, is that Jack Sawyer, the guy who scored that scoop and score touchdown for Ohio State, was actually roommates with Quinn Ewers when Quinn Ewers was on Ohio State's team. So, and those two guys are actually still really close friends. So that's a really interesting story. I think it's a great story. But Texas played them close, and if it wasn't for that strip fumble, maybe Texas ties the game, forces another overtime game like they had against Arizona State. We just, there's no way of knowing. It's just a hypothetical. But that's how that game went, 28-14, Ohio State. So now we have the 7 and the 8 seed, Notre Dame the 7 seed, Ohio State the 8 seed, playing in the national championship tomorrow night, Monday night on ESPN. And Ohio State is an 8.5-point favorite in this game. But before I go into the actual game and who I think is going to win and what to maybe look out for in the game, I'm going to go and talk briefly about the college football playoffs. There's, a lot of people have some strong opinions about this. The college football playoffs is the 12-team playoff era. This is the first year of that. And I think a lot of people, myself included, have vastly enjoyed this far more than the 4-team playoff. The 4-team playoff had so many issues with leading out deserving teams, putting runners up, like conference runners up, in the tournament because of they're one of the best teams, constantly changing the criteria of what they picked teams for. Some years it was, conference championships. Other years it was the best team. And it was just not a great way of doing it. In a lot of years, you left teams out that were very deserving. Like last year, Florida State went 13-0, very deserving, should have been in, and were left out. Georgia was also very deserving last year. Their only loss was in the SEC title game to Alabama, who was a really good team. We probably did get the two best teams in the national title game last year, and Michigan and Washington, but there were still deserving teams that got left out. Central Florida many years ago, when they went undefeated and did very well, they should have been in. There was a year that USC probably should have been in. There's a lot of these different teams throughout the last 10 years or so that would have been really interesting to see them play in a larger playoff format and how they maybe would have done. I think would have seen more upsets. But it is what it is. We can't change the past, but we can change what's going forward in the future. And there's talks of changing the playoffs now. But one thing I want to reiterate is that the 12-team playoff has worked exactly how it was meant to. It was meant as a way to give other teams a chance and not just limit it to 4 teams that a group of people in a boardroom pick. It's still technically, in my mind, a college football invitational in a way, because you still don't have every conference represented. Every conference doesn't have a chance to participate or earn their way into this. But it is a lot more real national championship than it was in years past, because there's a lot more teams in it and a lot more deserving teams in it. You can't say that these two teams, Notre Dame and Ohio State, aren't deserving of being here. They both had to run the gauntlet to get here. Ohio State had to beat Tennessee in the first round, and people, including myself, was picking Tennessee to beat them, and they ran them over 42-17. And the next round, they faced Oregon, the number 1 team in the nation, who'd beat them earlier in the year, and they beat them 41-21 and were up. What was the score at halftime in that game? 34-8 at halftime. Then, in the semifinals, they beat Texas, the only remaining SEC team, the only SEC team to make it to the semifinals. Notre Dame, on the other hand, beats a good Indiana team. They only beat them 27-17, but that game was a lot more separated than what that score shows. Indiana scored 2 touchdowns really late in that game, and one of them after recovering an onside kick. Notre Dame really dominated that game, if you watched it. Then Notre Dame went and played Georgia, the SEC champion, and beat them pretty handily, 23-10 in the Sugar Bowl, and then had an all-time classic against Penn State and came out on top of them, who's a really good team, and played Ohio State close in the regular season and had chances to score more on Ohio State and possibly win that game. So these two teams are both really good teams. They've ran the gauntlet to get here. And in the old format last year, both these teams maybe aren't in the playoffs. Ohio State definitely isn't in the playoffs if this was last year, them losing to Michigan would have kept them out. Notre Dame maybe would have had a chance in making a 4-team playoff because I really don't think they would have taken Penn State and Texas as both conference runners up. Now this year's a little different because you're taking so many more teams. It's like, well, we're getting these other teams that are deserving, so it doesn't really matter as much where we rank them. I think that's what the committee was thinking, and that seems to be what their reasoning for some of their rankings. But last year in a 14 playoff era, if we were just still in the 14 playoff era, I think Notre Dame maybe would have probably still made it with just one loss. It is a very bad loss, but just their complete domination of their opponents outside of that one loss, I think probably gets them in. I don't think the committee's taking two conference runners-up, and Penn State and Texas. And Ohio State was definitely not making it last year. But, the committee has been surprising in the past of the 14 playoff era, so they might not have picked Notre Dame last year. But regardless, we wouldn't have this national championship matchup. We wouldn't have had the all-time classic game between Texas and Arizona State. We wouldn't have had the classic game between Notre Dame and Penn State. We wouldn't have had a lot of these matchups that were really good. We wouldn't get Notre Dame Georgia that game, and we would have probably had Oregon, Georgia, maybe Notre Dame gets in, and Texas, or maybe they pick Boise State. We wouldn't have had the matchups we got. We wouldn't have had a few of these classic games like we had, and the better teams that won these games, that beat these other good teams, are in the championship. I don't think you can say that these teams aren't deserving of being here. And so what I was going to say is that in this format, whether they change the seeding or not of the conference champions getting a bye, I think we're going to see the better teams still win this majority of the time. Notre Dame has, outside of the Penn State game, has fairly controlled the game. I know the Georgia game, they got some lucky breaks go their way. Maybe not lucky breaks, but strip fumble that sets up a touchdown and a kickoff return for a touchdown. But that was a really good game, and Notre Dame kind of really prevented Georgia from scoring much. And then the Penn State game, it was back and forth. But these two teams were both really deserving to get here. The cream has risen to the top in this format. You have to run the gauntlet to win this thing. You got to win at least 3 games. You're going to be playing good teams. You can't get a lucky break where you're the number 1 seed and they decide to stick Boise State or Cincinnati or Central Florida in, and you win that one game and all of a sudden you're in the national championship. You don't get as lucky. You're not going to get as lucky like that anymore. You have to win 3 games. So I think you're going to get more deserving teams. You're also going to see a variety of teams win it with this format. This is what I have argued, why I've argued for an expanded playoff for years now, is with an expanded playoff format, you're going to get a variety of teams winning the championship. You're not going to have the same 3 teams playing in a 4-team bracket every year. You've got a 12-team bracket, and these teams are going to change quite a bit because you're going to have different conference champions some years. You're going to have a different group of 5 teams some years. You might have 2 group of 5 teams get in some years. This year maybe would have been an ideal situation if Army could have maybe gone undefeated or something. You're going to get some of the big teams change around, like Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina all missed it. Miami had a really talented roster and missed it. BYU and Iowa State were in the running to make it this year at points, and they didn't make it. Louisville was a team I picked before the season to make it, and they didn't make it. So was Florida State, and they've just imploded. But I think you're going to see a lot of different teams make it, and you're going to see different teams win it because you're not going to have, well, if Alabama wins the SEC, they're in the 14 playoff era. They just have to win 2 games and they're champions. You're going to see more teams in it, more good teams, and you're going to have to beat other good teams. You're going to have to win 3 games, and that's a lot harder than winning 2. And especially with the NIL and transfer portal, it's changed how it is too. It's made teams a lot more even. And as a whole, even though I don't like the transfer portal, even though I don't like the NIL, it's even the playing field amongst the big boys a little bit. But you also have, as I've argued, with the expanded playoffs, it's going to make talent spread out more to these teams, because why would someone go set and be the 3rd string cornerback or running back for Alabama or Georgia when they can go be the 1st string at Arizona State or BYU and still make the playoffs or have a chance to make the playoffs and compete for a national championship and get paid NIL money for it? So there is going to be that incentive, and I said this several years. I've said this for quite a few years. If you had an expanded playoffs, it's just more eyes on the game. It's going to make more interest of these other fan bases and teams, and it's going to make talent go to some of these teams. Because why would you be the third string cornerback at Alabama when you can go be the starting one at Arizona State or Jacksonville State or Boise State and make the playoffs or have a chance to make the playoffs? So you're going to have talent spread out more, and I would like to see the playoffs expand more with the group of 5 conference champions. I'd like to see all conference champions in and so many at-large teams, and then seed them however you want. That's maybe a topic for another video, but I've kind of gone on my soapbox a little bit there. But I think the expanded playoffs has worked as it's intended. You've got 2 deserving teams that are both really good, and as they have shown through the playoffs, they maybe are the 2 best teams in the country, and they're the 7 and 8th seed. So I think this shows that an expanded playoffs was needed, and it's we can't keep clutching our pearls that only undefeated teams should be playing in a title game. There should be no playoffs at all, or we should just vote the national champion. That's a Neanderthal way of picking a champion. You have to have an actual playoffs. FCS has it. They have a 2014 playoff. Division II has it. Division III hasn't. Every other NCAA sport hasn't. There's no reason for FBS college football to not have a national championship decided by an actual tournament. And we've seen that this year. I still don't think it's perfect. There's changes I would like to make, and I'm sure there's a lot of changes out there that y'all would like to see made to this playoff. Whether it's the seeding or the amount of teams, or you want more teams in like me. Either way, it is clearly a much better format or a better way of doing it than a 4-team or just voting on it. And we've gotten some great matchups, some great games out of it, and I think we're going to continue to see that in the future. I think I think a lot of fans have greatly enjoyed this, whether their team was in it or not, whether the team won or not. If Notre Dame didn't make it this far, or if Notre Dame loses in the national championship tomorrow, I'm still going to be very happy with this playoff. It was super exciting. I got to see some great games, and we've got 2 teams in the national championship that we've not only seen in a while, but a matchup we wouldn't get in the old format. So I like the way that it's gone. Now to get off my soapbox about the playoffs, I've talked enough about that. But my predictions for tomorrow for the College Football National Championship between Ohio State and Notre Dame, drum roll please. I'm picking Notre Dame. Notre Dame is an 8.5 point underdog. I think Notre Dame's going to cover, whether they win or not, Notre Dame is going to cover that spread. They're a much better team. They've proven people wrong all year. They have found ways to be gritty, to get turnovers, to score off turnovers. They lead the nation in turnovers for their defense, getting turnovers. They lead the nation in scoring points off turnovers. They're also arguably the best team in the middle 8, scoring the most points in the middle 8. So the middle 8 is the last 4 minutes before halftime and the first 4 minutes of the second half. Notre Dame is leading the nation in points scored and I think point differential also in the middle 8. And as we saw, that's very crucial in the Georgia game. The strip sack, the field goal, the strip sack, fumble, then scoring a touchdown, and then returning the kickoff for a touchdown to start the second half. That was 17 points there of their 23 was in the middle 8 there. They're really great at that, and I think that they're going to find a way to win this game. Now, just play devil's advocate for a second. Ohio State is a great team. They have probably spent the most NIL money of any team ever this season. Will Howard's a great quarterback. He's greatly improved his draft stock with the way he's played this year, as well as getting Ohio State to the national championship. They've got some talent on offense. Jeremiah Smith, he's a freshman. If he was able, he would probably be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. It's what a lot of people have said. He's a great talent, and Notre Dame is going to struggle to stop him. It's not they're not going to be able to shut him down. It's going to be how much can they limit him? How much can they prevent him from breaking away? How much can they prevent him from scoring touchdown? Like how many times can we tackle him as soon as he makes the catch. It's going to be how can Notre Dame limit him. They're not going to shut him down. Same thing with Will Howard. He is going to throw for some yards. He's going to score some. He's going to throw some touchdowns. There's going to be points scored in this game, but it's how much can Notre Dame stymie that offense? How much can Notre Dame slow Ohio State down? Now, Ohio State is going to run the ball fairly well. Texas has some really big defensive ends, defensive tackles, and we're able to slow them down a bit. But Ohio State is going to be able to run the ball a little bit, or at least try to run the ball. Notre Dame has had injuries all year on the defensive line, but as they have shown in the second half of the Penn State game, they can man up, they can play well and stop the run. It's going to be how can they cover in the secondary? Can Christian Gray and Landon Moore and Xavier Watts, can they cover these Ohio State wide receivers and Jeremiah Smith? Can they slow them down? Can they stymie them? And there's been a lot of talk of if Notre Dame should play man or they should play zone. They lead the nation, I think, in playing man coverage. It's what they've been great at. It's what they've been great at all year. So there's questions of whether they should change that to do zone to try and stop Ohio State. Texas did that, and it slowed Ohio State down a little bit. But I think Notre Dame is still going to run a lot of man in that game. They might mix up some zone to try and catch Ohio State off guard a bit of expecting man, and all of a sudden it's a zone, so it screws with them. They've also got to find ways to put pressure on Will Howard like they did against Drew Aller and especially Gunnar Stockton for Georgia. They've got to be able to pressure him. Otherwise, he's just going to sit back there and pick them apart. They've got to find ways to do pressure. Now, on the other side, on the offense, Notre Dame's offense has been really well this year, one of the best offenses in college football. The question is can Riley Leonard continue to man up, continue to step up, and be able to not only throw the ball but run the ball when needed, continue to make plays in some way. If Notre Dame's going to win this game, he has to ball out. He has to be the MVP again. He has to play extremely well for Notre Dame. He can't afford to turn the ball over. And Jeremiah Love also has to be able to run the ball and succeed in that. And I think Notre Dame will. I think Notre Dame is going to score what they need to win this game. I think it's going to be a great game. I think it's going to be close. It's going to be tight. And I'm going to make the prediction that it comes down to a last-second field goal, again, by Mitch Jeter. I'm taking Notre Dame to win 24-21 in this game. And that would be just right under the total for the betting line is, well, it's actually 46 and is it 45 and a half? Looks like it's 45 and a half, so it would be just under that at 45 be the total score. I think Notre Dame will win 24-21. I think it'll be a close game. I think Notre Dame, though, this has been a magical run. It's a magical season. They have found ways to win games, and everyone that they have played has overlooked them. The media has constantly overlooked them and said, whoever they're playing, Georgia's going to beat them. Penn State's more physical. Ohio State's going to beat them. And that Northern Illinois loss has motivated this team more than anything. No one believes in us. Everyone's counting us out. No one likes us. And there's nothing we can do about it. All we can do out there is go out and perform and play ball. And no matter the injuries, the next man is stepping up. Now, there is some questions over some injuries for Notre Dame. Anthony Knapp, one of the offensive linemen, he's actually out for this game. There's questions on if another offensive lineman will be out. There's thoughts that Charles Jagasaw, the freshman, will actually start at left tackle in this game. Notre Dame their offensive line has had injuries throughout the year. Defensive line's had injuries throughout the year. Riley Mills is out for this game. He's been out. He got injured in the Indiana game, so Notre Dame is having to overcome serious injuries to just be here, and they've been able to do it so far that the next man up mentality. I think Notre Dame's going to do it. I'm going to pick Notre Dame to win 24-21, win their first national championship since 1988, make me and Lou Holtz happy, And I think if they do, Riley Leonard's going to be the MVP of the game. That's the way they have to win it, is for Riley Leonard to step up and continue to play ball like he can. That's what I have for this video. Let me know what your thoughts are. Who's going to win the College Football National Championship tomorrow? Is it going to be Ohio State? Is it Notre Dame? Who are you rooting for? Let me know in the comments down below, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.